Hey, how y'all doing? This is Mongo Slade. So, I changed the linen on my bed, put on some fresh underwear, and I sat down to watch Kenny Omega presents the Kenny Omega edition of Impact Wrestling, and oh, it was fabulous. So much better than last week. Everybody's a star now. So I was blown away by how much better the show was because Kenny Omega was on it, and I can't even keep that shit up. I can't even keep it up. All right, so for the benefit of those who only want to hear me talk about Kenny Omega, I will talk about the Kenny Omega stuff first. I will not make everybody suffer through the rest of the show, similar to how Impact decided to treat the rest of the world by making us sit through 2 hours of garbage material before we got to what we actually wanted. Now, before we get into the Kenny Omega stuff, we have to look at the build-up for it. Now, throughout the night, there kept being a bus going around the impact zone. I have no idea why it was going in a circle around the impact zone, but it was. They showed 3 or 4 clips of Kenny Omega winning the title. And then we get this really weird, this really odd commercial. It's Tony Khan and Tony Schiavone in front of a bootleg Mid-Atlantic screen. And Tony Khan standing there with his arms folded. And he's like, I could stop Kenny Omega from doing this appearance. I could hit him with an injunction. I could do all these things. But I'm not going to. I decided to put some money in Impact's pocket for this paid promotion to talk about AEW Dynamite. Everybody should go watch AEW Dynamite. You know, he ran down the card for AEW Dynamite for the next night. And he talked about all the matches and Sting and all this type of stuff. And he said, Impact Wrestling, don't they have some tag teams? They have some really good tag teams, don't they? Well, we have the best tag team in the world, the Young Bucks. And they're going to be wrestling the hybrid too. You know? And he says, I want to keep my eye on them, kind of alluding to poaching some talent. Then he also starts talking about, I heard maybe I'll just buy Impact. Maybe I'll just buy Impact. And Tony Schiavone just kind of stood there with his eyes closed like Brock from Pokemon. And that's kind of how he stands all the time. Like Tony Schiavone just standing there with his eyes closed. Or he just standing there with a permanent squint. But they made a little joke about Tony Schiavone working in Impact in 2002. And he said, I left the wrestling business for 18 years after that. So then... So Tony Khan then said Don Callis is welcome to come to AEW Dynamite again on Wednesday, and he says, "Oh, I know Kenny Omega will be there because I set up his travel arrangements, and so I know how he'll be getting there. I know when he'll be getting there." All of this was just, it was similar to Vince McMahon going to Memphis in the '80s. Everybody who's in the know knows that Vince McMahon went to Memphis in the '80s. If you didn't, it's still up on YouTube, I believe. It was in the early to mid '90s. Vince McMahon made a trip down to Memphis. It was just a pre-recorded segment, and basically he cut a promo on Memphis. It was the seedling of Memphis, of Mr. McMahon. Let's be honest. So Mr. McMahon was first in Memphis, and then he branched out, and a couple of years later, Vince McMahon sort of perfected it for WWF TV. So Tony Khan talked on Impact before he talked on his own show, which is fine. He did a paid commercial for his own show, which is fine. And that's all essentially that they did. And, it was weird. It was very, very awkward because I wasn't expecting it. And Tony Khan does not have the power in his voice, the strength, the character. He's not as much of a carny or a character as Vince McMahon, so it doesn't work. He is like a lower testosterone Eric Bischoff. Like Eric Bischoff was already kind of low T, but Tony Khan is even more so than that, So that was really weird. So also throughout the night, so I'm just going to hit all of the stuff that involves AEW. After he gets into a weird conversation with Larry D, which we will talk about in the actual Impact portion. uh, Tommy Dreamer is sitting with Scott D'Amore. And Tommy Dreamer is like, I don't like this whole Kenny Omega stuff. This stuff never works. We've been through this before. The locker room might not like it, you know. And Scott D'Amore, who I don't know what Scott D'Amore's actual position is. Like, I don't know what he actually does. I don't know if he's Don Callis' boss. I don't know if Don Callis is his boss. I don't know how that works. But Tommy Dreamer's like, I know Don Callis. Don Callis is just in this for himself. He's going to screw over the locker room. He's going to screw over everybody. The locker room is like this. The locker room is like that. Tommy Dreamer is speaking for the locker room. And Scott D'Amore represents, of course, the business of Impact. And he doesn't care. He thinks this is a good thing because it's going to bring new eyeballs. So he thinks this is great. You know, and Tommy Dreamer is concerned that the locker room is not going to like it when you have all these crossovers. Because Tommy Dreamer, of course, did the ECW, WWE crossovers. Ended up working fabulously for ECW. It gave them, even though it kind of compromised them a little bit, but it did give them some attention. But, of course, WWE then poached a bunch of guys from their roster. And if you go back to Tony Khan's promo, we started talking about how great the tag teams were. He was talking kind of like he may poach some talent. Now, we all know, well, most of us who surf the internet know that the North, who is Josh Alexander and Ethan Page's contract will be coming up soon. This is something that a lot of people have been talking about online. Apparently, this is actually going to happen. And that the North is the top tag team in Impact, similar to LAX when they first jumped. For those who don't know, LAX is Santana and Ortiz. Well, they are the second or third iteration of LAX. But, so there may be a thing where the North gets poached from Impact, and maybe that's how we go with, well, Tony Khan went down to Impact to do this thing, and he poached the North and maybe some other team from Impact. But that's kind of what they were alluding to in the Tommy Dreamer, Scott D'Amore segment, that, somebody might come in and start stealing talent. Because I guess that's what happened when WWE and ECW is working together. The big company just started poaching talent from the smaller company. And, Tommy Dreamer was kind of telling Scott D'Amore that. But Scott D'Amore didn't give a shit because he's thinking about the business end of it. And the business end of it is, oh, this is more eyeballs on our product. Who cares? So later in the night, there is this security guard. And this security guard is blocking off this area. I don't know what the area was to. I don't think we got that far. But Rich Swann, after his match, which we will talk about in the Impact section, he's trying to leave. He's trying to go through this area. And the security guard is like, no. The world champion says that if you're not on this list, you can't go in this area. And Rich Swann, thinking it's Moose, because they've been having this running storyline where Moose is the TNA World Heavyweight Champion, even though he's not really a world champion. So Rich Swann is like, hey, how many times I got to tell y'all Moose is not a world champion? And then the security guard is like, Moose? Nah, we're not talking about Moose. We're talking about Kenny Omega. And then Rich Swann like, Kenny Omega? And, so then Josh Matthews shows up because he has to conduct the interview with Kenny Omega. So Josh Matthews is on the list. He walks by. Rich Swann, heavyweight champion of the world, gets turned around by a security guard who was like twice his size. I mean, it was obviously your world champion can't take a security guard. I mean, come on, Anyway, so they made Rich Swann look like a chump, which of course feeds into the whole Tommy Dreamer is concerned about how the locker room may perceive things. So that's good. They've established that Kenny Omega is a rival world champion, but it's seen by some to be a real world champion. And this was, of course, cemented in the promo that followed. So Josh Matthews goes into this bus. It's a big, luxurious bus that's been circling the Impact Zone. And the bus is Kenny Omega's bus. Don Callis, Kenny Omega, they meet Josh Matthews, and they say, well, we're going to do this thing that usually is reserved for Dynamite. We're going to do it right here. They're going to change the nameplate on the AEW World Championship the real World Championship. So Don Callis is unscrewing the Jon Moxley's nameplate. And while he's doing it, Kenny Omega's like, oh, you're friends with Dean Ambrose, right? And then Don Callis is like, yeah, he's a Stanford stooge. Like, he's a Stanford stooge. So that's, basically alluding, of course, talking about Jon Moxley and Josh Matthews both being working at WWE. And Josh Matthews stumbles and bumbles and bullshits, and they finally get to the meat of this portion of this thing, which is what's the relationship between Don Callis and Kenny Omega. So then Don Callis breaks it down that, he was struggling, and then Kenny Omega's uncle, who is the Golden Sheik, trained him and was his manager for years in wrestling. He met Kenny Omega when Kenny Omega was 10 years old, 27 years ago, and that he has promised that he was going to look after Kenny Omega ever since. And so he's been the guiding hand of Kenny Omega's career. And, the entire time. So he says, like, all of this began, my master plan began 3 years ago when I booked Kenny Omega versus Chris Jericho in the Tokyo Dome. He said, you guys think I left a very lucrative business career to be a commentator for New Japan Pro Wrestling? Like, you're idiots. This was all a big plan. This Jericho versus Omega match is the match that led to the creation of AEW. You guys should be thanking me. And he says, some people make matches. Other people make history. And we made history twice. Because not only did my idea led to the creation of AEW, but now we've taken the AEW World title and we brought it to Impact, which nobody ever thought would happen. And we're bridging these gaps and all this type of stuff, right? So he says that some people only change history once. We change history twice. Don Callis' portion of this whole thing was really good. Don Callis is a good promo. That was good shit. Okay? His passion, his focus, his diction, everything was good. Okay? Don Callis is really good. That is the part of this thing that I liked. The Don Callis portion of it was good. Then we got the Omega portion. Because Josh Matthews is going on about the gentleman's agreement and how isn't it a tarnishing of his legacy, how he defeated Jon Moxley and how, he attacked Jon Moxley with this microphone. Isn't that tarnishing Kenny Omega's good reputation? And Kenny Omega says to him, well, what would you do if somebody attacked your father? If somebody attacked a member of your family, what would you do? Would you hit that man? And he's like, I would do it. I think anybody would do it. So basically, of course, he's saying that Don Callis is a member of his family, long-term family friend. That I get it. He says that the people needed Kenny Omega to be the world champion. They've wanted Kenny Omega as the world champion. They really, really needed Kenny Omega to be the world champion because he has the best matches. If you look all over the world, Mexico, Japan, United States, all of the best matches are Kenny Omega matches. He says, but why are we coming to Impact Wrestling? Why did I choose to come to Impact Wrestling? And then he starts going into this thing about being a collector, a comic book collector. And that when he was a little boy, he used to collect comic books. And then he stopped collecting comic books because he could never get the most valuable comic books. So he stopped collecting comic books and now he's going to start collecting world championships. And now he's already got, what he called the Action Comics #1, the first edition of Superman. He has that version. He has that already, which is the AEW World Championship, the most important world title in wrestling, the World Championship. But Impact has a World Championship, and he says, I don't mind adding that to my collection. And he says, he'll kind of think about it. But then he says that there's a new announcement that he needs to make. And then Don Callis is like, no. Don't break the announcement. He's like, No, we'll do it on Dynamite. So now there's another piece of this story that we have to then watch on Dynamite. And so that was essentially it. That they kind of cut off right there. That maybe he's thinking about collecting these world titles. And he says that, oh, well, he said, Josh Matthews asked for a hint. He says Lex Luger, and they had earlier in the night called the bus the Lex Express. They kind of like the Lex Express. So my guess is that Kenny Omega is going to be this traveling champion who's going to go from place to place, defending the AEW world title and collecting other people's world titles, much like a Pokemon collector. Like Ash Ketchum. He's going to have his Pikachu, which is the AEW world title, and he's going to go to all these different gyms. What was that movie? There was a movie that was it was a Jet Li movie about the guys who were going to the different gyms, crashing the gyms and beating guys up. Was it? It wasn't It Man. I don't believe it was It Man. That's not a Jet Li movie anyway. But there was a Jet Li. I think it was Fearless, where you had these. Yeah, I believe it was Fearless, where you had these guys like Jet Li's gym. His karate school was next to all these other karate schools, and these guys were going to these karate schools, beating up the masters, and kicking their asses in front of their students because they were going to start their own karate school, so they had to beat up all the masters first. I believe this is actually historical. That people used to do that. They used to crash gyms. People still do that, though. People do that at MMA. They do what's called gym crashing, where people would just walk into a gym and try to fight the best fighter in the gym, or they'll try to fight the trainer in order to prove themselves. I think the most recent thing was a couple of years ago. Somebody crashed the gym. I don't know if they do it in boxing, but I know they do it in MMA because they used to do it in martial arts. So that's essentially the plans. What I said before about Kenny Omega creating like the J Crown of world championships, where he's going to have all these world titles, that seems to be the goal that they were going with here. And that they're building up to the dream match of Rich Swann versus Kenny Omega. Main event anywhere in the world. Apparently that's where we're going. Rich Swann, who couldn't get past the security guard. Rich Swann, who was completely disregarded by his own promotion. That's the guy Kenny Omega's probably going to end up wrestling. You know what? Okay. This is an interesting idea. It's not completely trash. It's not a completely trash idea. It could be interesting. I am always going to be on the whole, let's wait and see. Let's see how they do this. Are they going to have Kenny Omega wrestling on Impact pay-per-views? Similar to how Kenny Omega wrestles on AAA pay-per-views? Which is very strange because Kenny Omega already has 2 world titles. He's essentially the heavyweight champion of Mexico because he has the AAA Mega Championship. It's not championship. He's the AAA Mega Campeon. Campeon meaning champion. But he has that belt already. It was not mentioned, I don't believe. Triple Mania, which is the WrestleMania of Mexico, is actually this Saturday, December the 12th. Wasn't mentioned on Impact. And AAA has been partners with AEW since AEW's inception. And they don't promote AAA at all. Very weird. Very, very, very weird. But you'll see that becomes a problem as more people get involved. Also, AEW is already partnered with the NWA, right? They don't promote the NWA at all. You would think Nick Aldis would be the first option. But I guess Impact kind of makes a little bit more sense because it punctures the sort of the bubble. Like each promotion kind of has their own bubble where other promotions, they exist kind of, but they're outside. Like the Impact World title is the most important world title because it's Impact World title. Now they're introducing a rival world championship and saying that this is the real world title. Well, all the people who are against Impact are saying that. Don Callis is saying it. But I don't know what Don Callis' job is. So I don't know how serious to take it. So you have that issue. But it's interesting. It's an interesting idea. I don't have a problem with it. I just want to know how many people are really going to get involved with it. Most importantly, I see the NWA getting involved with it. I don't know if Ring of Honor will get involved with it. Some of the smaller promotions probably are already down for it. You know, your rinky-dink promotions, they probably don't care if they even have a title. Who cares? It can help the wrestling business, but these people consider Kenny Omega to be the biggest star in wrestling. He's considered to be this huge star by wrestling journalists and some wrestling fans, and now there is some sort of evidence that kind of connects to give them some argument. What is this evidence? Well, some dweeb on Twitter, I called him a dweeb all the time, and I think he corrected me and said he was a nerd. But anyway, he said that Impact had 3,000 views. That was the highest number of views the previous week. Now it's 50,000. So Kenny Omega led to a 47,000 view bump on Twitch. Just Twitch. We don't know about TV. But of Twitch people watching Impact. That's a pretty big jump. Now it's not a lot of people, you know. Yes, you could say there are Tim Pool videos that get more views than that. Sure, that's just being an asshole. Okay, we can all say that. You know, sure that there's Raw clips that get more views than that. That's just being an asshole. For Impact, that is very good. For a show with no stars, what they did was they brought in Kenny Omega. They treated him like a star because almost 1 million people watched him on TV. And then they injected some fresh energy into Impact. Unfortunately, Impact's show was, of course, taped probably weeks in advance. And they just put some taped portions around it. And most of the storylines were undisturbed. And you have that sort of idea, but you have people generating buzz. People are talking about it. My question now is it sustainable? Can you sustain 50,000 people per week? No. Because Kenny Omega's not going to be on the show next week. At least I don't believe so. And even if he is, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be negative on what they did and say, well, I refuse to watch Impact again. I'll just watch the clips. Because there's people who watched it on YouTube, didn't bother to watch the whole 2-hour show. And there was a lot of complaints. Impact is still recording in front of a very, very empty gym. So you hear everything. It's like the early WWE shows where the arena was completely empty. That's kind of how Impact shows are now. People complained about the commentary. The worst commentary in wrestling, I hold that is true. Madison Rayne and Josh Matthews are awful. They are awful. They are the worst Cabbage Patch Kids of commentary in the entire world. They are god fucking awful. They're terrible. I mean, they are the anti-Ric Flair of wrestling. They're the worst. So a lot of people are not going to watch Impact again. You know, for Impact, it was their opportunity. But unfortunately, don't have any stars. There was nobody on this show that was must see. So, and then they didn't give us everything. You know, a lot of people were like, well, Impact didn't put on all of their best performers. I was like, you apparently don't watch Impact because yes, they did. Yes, they did. Everybody who is a quote unquote star on Impact wrestled on this show. Everybody. Everybody, you know. So it is what it is. I'm not wholly bought in. I'm not a bandwagoner. I watch Impact already. As you guys know, I have been bipolar on Impact. I have been trying my best to continue watching it because I know that there are some people who watch it, and I watch it anyway. Because if I don't even turn my TV on unless wrestling is on. I'm not even going to hold you up. Anything else I want to watch, I can watch it on my phone. But I'll watch wrestling on TV. So, Impact put their best foot forward. At least not their best foot forward. Obviously, they didn't have like a big, huge main event. But they put the talent that they have out there. So, it was what it was. You know. But the Don Callis part of the Kenny Omega stuff was not bad. Kenny Omega himself, you know, did a decent job of explaining what he wants to do. There is still some pieces missing. We'll have to find that out on Dynamite. So, It seems to me like they're going with that J Crown idea that I was talking about, of just going to have Kenny Omega going around collecting all these titles. But like I said before, I don't know if Ring of Honor is going to participate. I don't see why they wouldn't. The NWA, I can almost guarantee they will participate because they already utilizing the women's division of AEW, and so I don't see why they wouldn't. Of course, that would be a slap in the face to Nick Aldis. Not like anybody cares about Nick Aldis, but it's kind of a slap in the face because Nick Aldis had to step aside for Cody before 2018, wasn't it? When they did All In, which one of the biggest independent shows of all time, and his match with Cody, where he had to do the job in front of all these people, and then when he won the title back, it was in a broom closet for NWA straight to DVD pay-per-view or straight to DVD match. It was bad. But now he's got the belt again. He's been champion the whole time. And now they're probably going to call him up like, hey, we need you to drop the belt to Kenny Omega. Oh, boy. If I was him, I wouldn't know what to do. I guess you got to do it, right? Guess you got to do it. I mean, you gotta promote the NWA, and you got to promote the NWA on your back. Like a whore. Let's talk about regular Impact, though. Now, I've talked about Kenny Omega. Let's talk about Impact. Impact started with one match after the whole clips from Dynamite. Josh Alexander of the North wrestled Chris Sabin of the Motor City Machine Guns. The match was not bad. The North, I'm guessing, are on their way out because Josh Alexander lost this match. And the North has done nothing but lose for the last month, maybe month and a half. They even just completely embarrassed Ethan Page. But the match wasn't bad. There was nothing offensive about the match. There was nothing trash about it. It felt like two guys going out in front of an empty gym having a match. And that's pretty much all Impact is. I was about to call it TNA. So after that, we get a promo from Chris Bay, who is the #1 contender for the Impact World Championship. And he's going to be in a tag team match in the main event with Moose as his partner against Willie Mack and Rich Swann. So what we get is Chris Bay wants to talk strategy with Moose. And Moose has changed from his issues with EC3. He's now more surly, more curt. And he's like, well, my fists do my talking for me. Do you really want to have a conversation with me? And then Chris Bay kind of backs up a little bit because he's a weasel. And he's like, well, I'm the world champion. We really going to have a conversation. And then Moose puts his fists up and is like, can't wait, basically. Then we had that weird commercial from Tony Schiavone and Tony Khan. And then we went into the next match, which was Brian Myers versus TJP. I told you they brought out all the stars, man. The stars are out. The stars were out on Impact. God damn. TJP versus Brian Myers. What? Superstars. Brian Myers won. Who cares? Then we had Cody Deaner as he prepared to fight Eric Young. Now, the story going into this is Cody Deaner was friends with Eric Young in the past, but now Eric Young has lost his mind and thinks that Cody Deaner is a joke, but he wants to prove that he's not a joke. So he wants to fight Eric Young alone and makes Cousin Jake promise not to interfere and help him. Cousin Jake makes that promise. Cody Deaner then goes and gets beat by Eric Young in like 4 minutes. I told you, man, the stars were out. The stars were doing what the stars do, man. Eric Young is a main event guy. So Cody Deaner is the underneath guy. Got to beat him. So post-match, Eric Young and Joe Doring beat the hell out of the Deaners. Then Rhino ran out to the ring to scare off Eric Young and Joe Doring with the pipe. Just a man with a pipe, dog. A man with a pipe in a dream. In a tag team title match with no partner because the partner apparently is still injured. So then TJP, because he lost, is being mocked by Rohit Raju, the X Division champion. The second best championship in the company. The title that used to carry Impact is now being held by Rohit Raju. Superstar Rohit Raju. If you don't know who that is, that's your fault. That's your loss. That's your loss. Rohit Raju was awesome, I guess. To some people. He fucking sucks. Anyway. Final resolution will be the final Defeat Rohit Challenge of 2020, and it is open to any and everybody except TJP, because TJP still has this this stipulation over his head that he cannot wrestle for the Impact X Division Championship as long as Rohit Raju is the champion. And TJP wished him good luck, which apparently means that he's going to try to do some foolishness to take this title off of Rohit Raju. Whatever. So then we get some silliness. Larry D and Tommy Dreamer. So Tommy Dreamer is confronted by Johnny Bravo, who is yelling about Larry D needs to be arrested. He needs to go to jail. He wants something to happen to Larry D because Larry D shot him. So Tommy Dreamer says, I'll handle this. He goes over to Larry D and he says, you need to turn yourself in right now. And Larry D's like, no, I don't think I will. And then Tommy Dreamer gets in his face and Larry D said, you know what? I'm tired of this. I'm tired of you saying I did this. I told you I was set up. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to have a match at Final Resolution. If I beat you, I get to go free. If you beat me, I will turn myself in. And then Tommy Dreamer says, challenge accepted. Wrestling match made, or something like that. And then, won't you be damned? How Larry D kind of stood there stupefied, like, you're going to let me go on an attempted murder charge if I win a wrestling match? Kind of a wink and a nod to the crowd, right? Like, ain't that dumb? And Tommy Dreamer very aggressively says, I can do what I want. And I said, booyah! They nailed this one, dog. Impact brought everything on this show, man. They just, this heightened view, man, amazing. Some truly creative and amazing stuff they got here. So then the women's division tournament, tag team tournament continues with Kimber Lee and Deonna Purrazzo versus Taya Valkyrie and Rosemary. Interesting. They actually mentioned Taya's Mexico career, her being the Rey de Reyes, which is the Queen of Queens championship. I don't know if she's going to be on Triple Mania. I looked at the card. I don't remember if she's on it or not. But Taya and Rosemary actually won. Rosemary pinned Kimber Lee with the wing clipper. I don't know what Rosemary calls it, but the wing clipper is what Angel Garza calls it. So Deonna Purrazzo and Kimber Lee are eliminated from the tournament. Not like anybody cares. So then Alicia Edwards is in the back. She's pacing like a lioness. And Tennille Dashwood approaches her talking about herself, because that's all Tennille Dashwood does, talk about herself in her Instagram. Talks about what she's going to call herself, the influencer or something like that. And Alicia Edwards says, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for you. And Tennille Dashwood was very offended. You don't have time for me? You don't have time for this? And Alicia Edwards says no. And then Tennille says, well, you're off the team. Well, apparently they were teammates in this tournament. I think they were already eliminated or something to that effect. And Alicia Edwards said, if you were really my friend, you would know that my husband got attacked with a baseball bat a couple of weeks ago. And I'm more concerned about that. And then Tennille Dashwood says, well, I'm going to teach you this lesson. So Alicia Edwards said, can you do that later? So I thought that was pretty interesting. Okay, I was like, okay, I thought that was funny. But so Sami Callihan is in the ring. The warthog himself, the one-man Nasty Boys. He's in the ring, and he's calling himself the Draw again. Okay? He talks about being the best in the ring. He talks about being the best on the mic. Of course, he's shaped like Danny DeVito when he played the Penguin, but hey, whatever. Whatever floats your boat, find your lost remote. He says he carries Impact. He's been carrying Impact all this time because he's a star. And thinks his bat attack on Eddie Edwards caused Impact to trend. It was on TMZ Sports and everything. And he showed the clip. The clip was of when he hit Eddie Edwards in the throat with a baseball bat in the chair. Essentially, he put the chair over the throat of Eddie Edwards and banged it with a baseball bat. Then he says it felt so good, he decided to do it again. And he hit Eddie Edwards with a bat again a couple weeks ago when he busted his head open. And he wanted to show that, but then nothing would happen. Then Alicia Edwards come down to the ring, and then Sami Callihan looked at her and said, "You're 4 foot nothing. You want to fight me? I will break your neck." And then Alicia Edwards said, "You're not going to break my neck." And then Eddie Edwards attacked Sami Callihan from behind. And the two of them fought until Eddie Edwards was able to get the bat. And then he swung the bat at Sami Callihan, who ducked and slid out of the ring and away from this crazy man with this baseball bat. Man, I swear Eddie Edwards is so boring. He is so boring. Jesus H. Christ. He is so boring. He's awful. Eddie Edwards is fucking awful. Okay? Oh, he's awful. Awful. With 2 L's and a capital A. He's fucking terrible. So Eddie Edwards is back and he's super excited. He's jazzed up. He wants to kill Sami Callihan. Alicia Edwards says, "Okay, we handled your problem. Now you need to help me handle mine." And Eddie Edwards is like, "Okay, I'll help you." I don't even know what with. I guess it's the Tennille Dashwood thing. Anyway, the main event came where you had Chris Bay and Moose versus Rich Swann and Willie Mack. The first actual good wrestling match of the night. The opening segment, the opening exchange between Chris Bay and Rich Swann was actually very good. You know, there was a lot of good counters. They're very acrobatic, very athletic. Guys were fast, but their shit was smooth. You know, it wasn't very hard hitting, but it was 2 high flyers doing 2 kind of cruiserweight-ish guys doing cruiserweight-ish guy stuff. Okay, so it was not bad. The match ended with Chris Bay pinning Willie Mack after Moose basically beat the guy into powder with a ground and pound, a bunch of strikes. It's kind of the similar thing that he beat EC3 with, where they basically building up Moose to be a killer. So he pretty much beat Willie Mack to death almost, and Chris Bay stole the win. So that was it. That was the show, and then after he lost, that's when that's when Rich Swann could not get through the locker room or whatever because the real world champion had blocked everything off to seal the segment. And so that was that. I told you everybody that TNA had been pushing over the last several months appeared on this show. Ty Valkyrie, Rosemary, Chris Bay, Rich Swann, Willie Mack, Moose, Sami Callihan, Eddie Edwards. The only person who was missing was Ken Shamrock. Okay? The North were there. The Motor City Machine Guns were there. They didn't wrestle as a tag team, but they were there. So they brought out everybody that they had. So people who are saying Kenny Omega is a draw, well, you know what? For the audience that existed, yes, Kenny Omega is a draw. But I can tell you with, pretty good clarity that anybody who watched this show that don't usually watch this show only watched the show because Kenny Omega was on it, and they probably just like AEW. Because there was a lot of people complaining about this show. They were complaining about everything about it. They just wanted to know what Kenny Omega was going to do. And now that we know, how many of those people are really going to continue to watch Impact? I don't know. But Kenny Omega did a good job of drawing this one time. Okay? Now, consistency, can he do it multiple times? Don't know. Honestly, don't know. I still believe that a lot of this whole Kenny Omega being a big star thing is a myth. Okay? I believe that, people are very excited about the whole Impact thing, but they're excited right now. Once they get used to it, it will wear off. Just like everything else. When, everybody was super happy or super excited about any type of new change, new status quo. But once the status quo change starts to become the new status quo, then it just falls back into place. People are going to be like, oh, okay, Kenny Omega's going to be on Impact again. You can only do it once. Like you can only do a surprise one time, and then it's not a surprise anymore. Right? So the surprise of Kenny Omega being on Impact is done. So next, the surprise is going to be what Kenny Omega shows up on Ring of Honor TV. The next surprise is Kenny Omega shows up here or there. But once those surprises happen, they no longer be surprises anymore. And I don't think surprises count as a draw. I just don't. A draw is sustained over time. You know, a draw is, hey, can you bring the same people back to the show on Monday? Or can you increase the audience, consistently? To give you an example that people will never get anybody credit for is Roman Reigns, right? The SmackDown ratings increased when Roman Reigns came back. And then they continued to increase every week that Roman Reigns was on TV. So he is a draw. They will tell you that he's not a draw. Or they'll talk about something else. They'll talk about the color of the Titantrons or something stupid like that. Anything except the fact that he gets consistently drawing money. Consistently, like over a stretch of time. Like it's been 2 months or something like that already. So if Kenny Omega can consistently, let's say, draw, then that's fine. I will say he's a draw. But I don't believe it. Why don't I believe it? I don't believe it because AEW is bringing in Shaq and Sting. If you believed that Kenny Omega was really a draw, why do they need Shaq and Sting? Why would you pay? There's no doubt you're paying Shaq and Sting more money than you're paying Kenny Omega to do far less work. I don't believe it. So that's just me. But Kenny Omega presents the Kenny Omega edition of Impact Wrestling with a smashing success for Impact. They more than 10 times their views. That's a good start. But how many of those people are actually going to keep watching? Most of them won't. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Like this video, share this video, subscribe to this channel. Please donate. And I'll talk to you guys later. Thank you guys for listening. Have a nice day.